Hello, Trail Network. You're listening to the Trail Network podcast, hosted by Rachel Drake, myself, Leah Yingling, Hillary Yang, and Katie Asmuth. We're here to celebrate the community, connections, and untold stories within trail running. Let's dive in. On this week's episode, I'm joined by Rachel Drake, and we recap the Ultra Trail Snowdonia, which I just got to spend some time out in northern Wales, where I was crewing my husband, Mike. And then we recap Rachel's incredible journey across the Grand Canyon this past weekend, where she did a rim to rim to celebrate her third trimester. Excited to dive in with Rachel, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the Trail Network podcast. I'm Leah Yingling, and I am joined by my fellow co-host Rachel Drake for this week's episode. Rachel and I actually have not, despite living in the same town, we have not been able to catch up for what feels like weeks at this point. So you guys might just be privy to me and Rachel just being buds and shooting it and catching up on life. How's it going?
So good. Yeah, I have so much I want to talk to you about and ask you about. I feel like we've both done a lot since we've last really chatted. So I'm excited to hear what's going on in your life and in your pregnancy. And yeah.
I know. I think we saw each other probably two weeks ago or so now, right before I left for Snowdonia. And I feel like you've been in the midst of a lot of crazy anesthesia rotations and other rotations, and then have had your own adventures for yourself. So yeah, it's been a lot. How's life been?
It's been good. Yeah, I loved the anesthesia rotation. I was just like smitten, and I'm sad that now I'm starting a different rotation actually tonight, which will be great. But I'm just getting really excited for anesthesia training, and there's so many cool attendings and residents at the University of Utah that I'm excited to learn from, and like a lot of the same things that we like. There's a lot of like trail runners and mountain bikers and parents with young kids, so it's just fun to share a lot of those threads.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think this might just even be touching on people doing residency or med school in Utah, but has that been something that's been surprising to you as you've gone through your residency journey, of kind of the quality of life balance that you see other professionals in your field have?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was definitely a big draw to the University of Utah as well, just knowing that and hearing stories about people who are excellent physicians and very well trained, but also have other things going on. Like there are multiple attendings who are running 100Ks and 100 milers. And this guy I worked with is running one of the Twisted Fork races that our friends Finn and Jules from Single Track are putting on in a couple weeks. So it was just so fun. Like he knew all about who Finn was and was very impressed that I knew who Finn was. So super funny. And then our mutual friend, Kate Koniak, is a anesthesiology attending as well. And I first met her through, obviously through you, but she had heard Tyler and I on the Free Trail podcast. And I had mentioned being interested in the University of Utah. And I actually worked with her last week. So that was just so cool.
Oh, it's so full circle. I love it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Snowdonia, though.
Yeah. Gosh, it was so cool. Yeah, so for those of our listeners who are not familiar, Ultra Trail Snowdonia is a by UTMB race that's out in the mountains of northern Wales. And my husband Mike was running the 100-mile race there. And this race, I mean, all the races there, we were just receiving feedback from friends who have done it before. I think we were initially inspired by Abbey Hall and Cordis Hall a couple years ago, looking like they just had this amazing journey out there. Cordis has run, I think, one or two of the races over consecutive years. But all we knew was that people would describe it as like Hardrock at sea level. So it's like 33,000 feet of vert over 100 miles, really technical, rocky terrain, like rocks on rocks on rocks, but mile for mile, just a very, very beautiful area. And Mike keeps describing it as one of the most beautiful courses that he's ever done. And
wow,
I got to see like bits and pieces of it on some like little hikes and runs that I was doing. But yeah, I got to crew him out there, and it was such an amazing time. I kind of kept describing it as our baby moon, but didn't really feel much like a baby moon when all was said and done because it was pretty go, go, go the whole time.
A lot of work, staying up all night,
Totally.
crewing while pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually a quite crew friendly race. Like, my only limitation with it was I never learned how to drive on the other side of the road or on the other side of the car while we were there. Like, Mike was the driver from the get go. And then our friends Peter and Emily were on the crew with me, and they live in London and they're from Dublin. So they're very familiar with driving
Oh,
that way.
that's nice.
So I was like in the backseat getting chauffeured around. But very crewable race. We ended up I think seeing Mike at 6 spots. And honestly, it was timed kind of nicely where we crewed from, I think the race started at 1 p.m. and then we crewed till like midnight that night. And then weren't going to see Mike until like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. the next morning. So we actually had a decent chunk in the middle of the night that one could sleep if one was able to sleep. However, I'm just a ball of anxiety during these races. And I'm like, yeah, I'll lay down. And then I find myself like checking the tracker, and then it'll say imminent. And I was like, oh, I'll just wait till he gets to this aid station, then I'll go to sleep. And then that just kept happening. So I ended up with very little sleep, but it was well worth it.
Know how that goes. I'm curious too, just how like international travel was for you. If you, I don't know if you sleep with like a pregnancy
Yeah,
pillow or if you like how if the food is different over there, but I just feel like there's lots of little considerations that
totally. Yeah, I think
come
this
into play.
yeah, this is interesting because I feel like there's like the two threads here of traveling while you're six months pregnant or 6.5 months pregnant. We both, yeah, Rachel and I both just entered our third trimesters, which is very exciting. It feels like a big milestone. Um,
Woo.
but yeah, I feel accomplished. But yeah, it was kind of a blur, and there was definitely some of those nice comforts that I have every day at home that I did not have there. And like one of the first things was we packed in such a blur. Like, I think we're almost too used.
You guys never do that
Yeah, we
though, do
just oh my
you?
god, every trip, it's like 2 hours until we should be leaving, and I'm like, I have not begun packing. But I almost think it's a good thing and a bad thing. I think we're really used to traveling on like weekend trips or quick race trips, or international travel has been like it's not so scary anymore. That it feels quite easy to plan for, almost like even though it is international, you're planning for it in the same way you would something domestic. So yeah, all that to say is I did not pack until like an hour and a half before we left for the airport. And so I was packing in a whirlwind, and I forgot my airplane pillow, which was really sad. I have this one that
Oh
just like
no.
velcros around my neck, and then I just like get to sleep on the side kind of. It's really nice. But all things, that was like the only thing I forgot. So I did not have that first comfort. And then yeah, I have this amazing pregnancy pillow at home that is just like this huge noodle that surrounds my entire body. And it's been the one thing that has been a game changer for my sleep during pregnancy, because I've had a great pregnancy so far and like pretty asymptomatic largely. And my one biggest symptom has been just chronic insomnia, but my pillow helps a lot. And I do feel like going into this trip, we had poor sleep for the week prior, and then entered this trip, continued getting poor sleep. So that part wasn't great.
And that's a bulky thing. You can't
No.
exactly pack. And then a lot of hotels will have some extra pillows, but I feel like sometimes, like, I don't know, European countries, maybe the pillows are a little thinner, or there's
Yeah.
just fewer of them.
Yeah. I ended up like retrieving many of the pillows off the couch to like put under my back, put between my legs, put under like the bottom of my legs, and like just manipulating to try to make my sleep as good as possible. But wasn't exactly the case. And what was really interesting, and I don't know if this is just me being like very cognizant of what is happening in my body, but I feel like I entered our trip to the UK not feeling totally pregnant, and honestly like not looking totally pregnant. And then I feel like by the time I came home, I was like, I look like I'm about to deliver a baby. So something happened in that like 10-day
You just
span.
kind of
I
pop. You
did.
just pop at some point. And you're like, yep,
I know.
there he or she is.
We hiked with Finn and Jules yesterday, and I they had Sloan with them, and I was like, oh man, Sloan got so big since the last time I saw her, which was like 2 weeks ago. And she's like, Jules is like, your belly got so big since the last time I saw you. I was like, I know something happened. So the belly is here to stay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so exciting. Any issues with like eating or food or like just things that you were paying more attention to while you were over there?
No, honestly, I'm trying to think. Not really. Like we did
That's
afternoon
good.
tea the one day, which was really nice, and it comes out with like all these like little sandwiches and treats and stuff. So I mean, half the time you don't really know what you're consuming, but all that felt
Yeah.
largely like okay by pregnancy standards, and
Awesome.
yeah, not bad at all. Like it felt pretty seamless. I feel like there's a time in pregnancy where you're a little bit nervous to do international travel beyond a certain point, and that might be in that like 6 to 7 month period you start kind of shutting it down. So this is probably
Mhm.
about the latest I would have liked to take an international flight. Lucky for us, in Salt Lake we have a direct flight to London, and then we did like a London to Liverpool train, and then drove like 2-ish hours from Liverpool to Snowdonia. So the travel actually was not terrible. Um, and yeah, very grateful, very very grateful for that being like pretty seamless.
That's good.
It's a great place to visit though. We just kept saying like it's so I feel like it's been very understated how cool that area is. We'd spent time in Snowdonia before the race in Wales, and then traveled over to the Lake District, which was about a 2-ish hour drive, 2-3 hour drive from Snowdonia to see that area. And the mountains are awesome. I kept describing it as like almost like New England and the Tusher Mountains here in Utah combined in some ways. And I just really want to go back out there to explore more because it was pretty just gnarly terrain, really beautiful views, but like climbs aren't terribly long, like no extremely long climbs, extremely long descents, but really technical but beautiful all at the same time and pretty approachable because it's not at altitude, which was awesome.
Yeah. If you look at the elevation profile for the 100 miler, probably any of the races, it just looks like very, very
Yeah.
steep. Like the elevation lines are
Yes.
stacked on top of each other, which means it's
Yeah, I think there was
super
one
steep.
segment on Mike's course. I forget what it was called. It has a funny name, but I think it was like 1,800 feet in zero point 0.8 miles is the one segment on Strava, and this was at like mile 80. And it was also at a
Oh
point in the race
no.
where I'm like, he was slowly starting to have some of his own issues out there, and like the timer would say one thing about like when he was expected into an aid station, and then he was conquering this section of the course, and I was like, I just hope he's okay out there right now.
Oh, yeah.
Quick break to thank Osprey for sponsoring this episode of the show. Osprey has been a leading maker of premium outdoor backpacks and bags for over 50 years. There are many reasons I turned to Osprey, but one is because of their pillars of sourcing sustainable materials. By incorporating recycled and Blue Sign approved materials into their products, they're helping to keep harmful chemicals out of our environment. Osprey has eliminated PFAS-based durable water repellent in 100% of their textile products, and as of fall 2024, 100% of Osprey's products have 100% recycled content in the lining fabric, and 99% of Osprey's products have 100% recycled content in the main body fabric. Osprey continues to reduce environmental impacts and produce more sustainably designed products every year. This is the type of company I want to support, and I know you do too. Learn more at osprey.com. Now back to the show.
Did he say if it was like hands and feet? Like,
I think like
is
definitely
he?
using like hands on a lot of things at
Wow.
times, and like it's pretty scrambly on some sections. So I think the nighttime sections could be like slightly treacherous at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then also we had absolutely amazing weather while we were there. Like everybody kept telling us, you are so lucky. The weather is never this nice for this long. We haven't had rain in a while. And I think the Snowdonia area is just known for pretty like rough, moist conditions where it's raining, it's slick,
Mm-hmm.
it's boggy, and like our weather was pretty spectacular the whole time. So I can't imagine that course. And he keeps saying the same thing. He can't imagine that course in
Wet.
wet
Yeah.
conditions because it was pretty prime, and they actually activated like the hot weather kit for this race. I think it was like 65 to 70, probably 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and got pretty warm on the exposed sections in the middle of the day when there wasn't any wind blowing.
Man. Crazy. Do you want to go back and do one of the
I
races?
think so. There was a moment, and I caught it when I was filming Mike at one of the aid stations. He came in off this really technical descent into a town called Dowadellan around, I think like 50 miles or, yeah, probably about 50 miles or so, 40 miles. And he looks at me in the aid station. He said, "You could never do this race." And he meant it more in like a, you would be miserable doing this race. Like it is, you would hate these descents. And I like,
You're a good technical descender,
I
though.
know, but I hate it sometimes. And I looked at him and I think I was like, I know. I think I would. But we talked after the race, and I think the 100-mile race would be a lot for me, just like mentally, just how technical it is over, so many hours. But I think the 100K would be fun. And I think that is kind of like that. I think the women won in like 16 hours and change this year. So I think that amount of time I could stomach of having that like consistent technicality, that's okay. But I think when it's pushing that like 30-hour range, that's a lot. And speaking
Yeah.
of women in the 100-mile, so this year the race started and there was like 245 entrants in the Snowdonia 100-mile race. 12 of them were women. No, 20 of them were women. And
only 20?
20 were women, yeah. Which comprised, I think I calculated at one point, I think it was about 8%, 8.5%, which is, I always love to talk about the split when I look at start list. And usually it's like 80-20 male to female when it's like, when there's not good representation. So seeing like this
Right.
8.5% was pretty drastic. There ended up being 12 women finishers. And so that was a 60% completion rate, which actually matched the male completion rate for the race as well. But yeah, I think who was it? Mercedes. She's Siegel Gaither. She was a runner from Colorado. She was, I think, only one other American runner that had finished the race. And she had commented in an Instagram post, I think there's only been under 30 female finishers ever of the Snowdonia 100-mile race, which is mind-blowing.
How many years has it been going on?
I think probably around 5 or so, I would have to say.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was really cool because, I mean, she gritted out a tough finish. I think she was around like 40, 41 hours, had a good day out there, but also like she was super proud
It's
of
just
her
a long
finish.
time to be out.
It's hefty and it's so impressive. Would love to see more women make it out there, but it also begs this question of like, could races that are kind of this gnarly technical, demanding of a lot of time, like what is the barrier for women to doing those races? And I know that there's many, but what are the main drivers there?
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, training is one, like finding time to train if you have kids, finding time away?
I think so.
Or like getting childcare for honestly like a few days in a row just for the race.
Especially like, I think getting like having access to train like that too. And it's nearly impossible for a lot of people to be living in areas that you can get terrain that is similar. But like for a race like this, if you're even thinking about how you would train for Hardrock, the amount of time that is required to train for something like Hardrock sufficiently, it's the same amount of time that you would kind of wanting to invest in a race like this. And that's hard, especially when you're a woman that might be a mother balancing a lot of different things.
I guess the only other thing that makes it slightly easier is that it's not at altitude, so you don't have to worry about that component.
Definitely.
When you end up, because you have a spot into Hardrock, heck yeah. Will you go somewhere? I mean, we have access to altitude here to some degree, but will you try to travel to?
I think so. I've been thinking a lot about this, and we could actually dig into Stephanie Case's race at the 100K at Snowdonia a little bit too. But she's also into Hardrock this year after running it 3 years ago and then having a deferral from pregnancy for the last couple of years. And she's had quite the journey. But it was cool to see her do this race in the build to Hardrock. But yeah, it definitely made me think about like what year I will choose to return to Hardrock. Like, will I try to do it next year when I'm 11 months postpartum? Stephanie is going to be, when was her baby born? I think in November of this past year. So she's going to be like 8 months postpartum when she lines up at Hardrock this summer, which is amazing and mind blowing. So that's been like something that's been first on my mind. But then second on my mind is like, how will I train? Because at that point I will likely have like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. And I live at 5,000 feet here in Salt Lake, and we can get up to 11,000 foot peaks around us, but you're never truly like staying up at 11,000 feet.
Right.
So I do think it's very much a privilege that I can work remote. And I think we would do some kind of like block up at higher altitude just to be as acclimated as possible, because I think that's tough. Even living like relatively high like we do, it's still not enough.
Yeah, it's another layer of, yeah, spending the time up, and rather than going from 7,000 to
Yeah.
11,000 and spending a little
Yep.
time up at the top, to being in the San Juans and starting at 10,000
Yeah.
and going up to 14 and spending a lot of time at,
Totally. And
those
that was like,
higher
that was definitely
altitudes.
one of my revelations during Run Rabbit this year, is that was challenging. And I think it was also challenging, like I trained pretty high for that as best I could, but I think it was just that sustained staying up high when your body's really like broken down and been through the
Mhm.
ringer for 80 miles. And then it's like, okay, now you're going to stay above 10,000 feet for the next 20 miles. And that's hard to simulate around here. Like we can actually run on the Wasatch Crest Trail, which is right around like 9,900 feet. And that's the best we can do, which is good. But yeah, it's hard to simulate that tired body that late
Yeah.
in a race.
Another cool thing that I'm thinking of with Stephanie Case is you and Stephanie have the same coach with
Yeah.
Megan Roach. So I was even just saying before we started recording, I was like, man, maybe I need to get Megan to coach me postpartum. Like, I want to be winning 100Ks at 6 months postpartum, but I also realized that, I got a stress fracture 4 months
Yeah.
postpartum. So you can't necessarily expect the same out of yourself, but like what are your thoughts on her amazing
Oh, I
return to
mean, it's
form?
amazing. And for those, I feel like if you follow running period right now, you probably saw some kind of blip of the story of Stephanie Case on any media forum in the last week. But she won the 100K at Snowdonia, started in the third wave, 30 minutes back, ended up winning by like 7 minutes. So kind of everybody in those podium positions didn't really know how it was going to shuffle out until Stephanie crossed the finish line. And she's 6 months postpartum and stopped 3 times to breastfeed her little girl during the race. And there's some really cool images of her like eating watermelon while she's breastfeeding at the same time at an aid station.
So cool.
And something I love about Stephanie's journey is she's been extremely transparent about what it took for her to have her baby, but then also what it's been taking to come out of the other side and not quote unquote bounce back, but just like have this return that's actually quite different than everything it was before. And I very much appreciate seeing that, because it's very easy to look at stories like that and be like, I want that for me. But you also have to approach it with realization of everybody's different, every journey is different. And I feel like Stephanie's broached that topic in a really gentle, like open armed
Yeah.
way of saying, hey, women are
Hmm.
capable of a lot and everybody's different. And I've worked with a lot of professionals to get to where I am today. And it's been a lot of really hard work. And hopefully we get the chance to chat with her on our podcast sometime soon, because I would love to hear more about her story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's super cool how she, in talking after the race, is just acknowledging that, yes, to some, this is extremely inspiring. And I mean, undoubtedly just incredible what she's been able to do. But to others, it might feel discouraging or like, not realistic. So I think it's just really cool that she kind of like is carving out space for both, sort of like almost like a bittersweet, like, yeah, this is amazing, but also you can't necessarily expect yourself to be able to do the same thing.
No.
So
And something that I think is really interesting about her journey from her Hardrock deferral into Hardrock this year, and is a nuance with the Hardrock pregnancy deferral, is you have to decide if you have a pregnancy deferral, you have to decide by the end of the lottery entry period if you're using your deferral for the next year. So Stephanie had her baby in November. The Hardrock lottery period ends like end of November, I'm pretty sure. And they draw the lottery like second week of December, first week of December. So Stephanie had to decide when she was like just birthing her baby that she could enter the Hardrock lottery for the next calendar year. So 8 months later that she could physically do that. And so that part is really interesting to me, that she kind of put all her eggs, put all of her eggs in the Hardrock basket in November, right after delivering her baby, trusting that her body could make it to July 8 months later. Which I think that part really isn't talked about enough, of like that promptness of the decision making that she had to make early on.
Yeah, there's so many nuances with pregnancy, obviously, postpartum journeys, and then also how the policies impact all that stuff.
Totally.
And another thing she brings up is, and she's been very public about her fertility journey, and how she hadn't raced for several years because she had gone through fertility treatments and miscarriages and a lot of really hard physical and emotional things. And in that time, her UTMB index, or her ITRA, or International Trail Running
Mm-hmm.
Association score, that really matters for getting into these elite heats of races, like those scores were diminished. I think I haven't seen any policies that really
No.
point to any forgiveness for people going through those things.
Yeah.
So I think that's another like nuance that's brought up by all of this.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know it's something that the PTRA is working towards and has talked about in the past, but is like the freezing of your UTMB index. Because, for example, like for you and I, we have scores right now that might get us like entry into certain races, might get us into like an elite wave at a certain race, but
Mm-hmm.
all those races have like they retire after a certain time. And actually, this stands for like everybody in the field too. Like, it's nice to know what your UTMB index is, regardless of like elite status or amateur status, wherever you exist in the playing field. And it's a limitation when these races then expire, because you lose that standing. So I think in Stephanie's case, she had like lost her UTMB index entirely. So she was almost like entering this race as just like a completely like brand new runner in some
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I'm curious whether and maybe when she comes on the
Yeah.
podcast, we can ask her if she tried to, reach out to the race director and say, hey, I've had a bit of a journey, but I do have a bit of a pedigree with my
Mhm.
running. Is there any way I can get in the
Totally.
elite heat?
I'm
Because I
curious
think a
too.
lot of times they will honor that,
Mhm.
and hopefully work with people. But sometimes, maybe she wanted to be a
Mhm.
little bit more of an unknown, or just kind of like see how things go, not starting out in the elite heat. So
Definitely.
yeah, I'm just curious about those details.
Yeah, I'm so curious. And because I do think, I don't know, like I think all the UTMB races have like a certain index standard that gets you into the race as an elite. And I think the 100-mile UTMB index is actually like the most lax. So it's actually like a pretty lower relative score than like 100K or
Okay.
50K and things like that. So yeah, I do wonder if like she would have had a chance of kind of sneaking in there,
Hmm.
despite her pregnancy journey.
The other thing this brings up, just in just the complications of pregnancy and fertility, is for professional athletes. A lot of times, I think most brands now have pretty strong pregnancy policies that, your contract will not be terminated for pregnancy. And, in a seamless pregnancy that goes all the way to term, it sort of works and appears generous. Like, to say, okay, 9 months before you're due and 9 months after, you're not expected to race, you're not expected to perform. But that doesn't really take into consideration what if you had a miscarriage, or what if you had to back off of your training or racing to try to get pregnant. I haven't heard of or seen any policies that actually point to that. So I think that's
And it's so
another
realistic
nuance
too.
here.
Like I think, regardless of when there are complications in a pregnancy, like you have that period where you are pregnant and then recovering from being pregnant or recovering from not being pregnant anymore, and then the journey
Hmm.
that is induced afterwards, and it's just very long. It's long, and
Yeah.
I think there's just we've chatted about this a few times on the podcast, but just the variety. of experiences. And this is, I had a friend in the ultra running space who is a sponsored athlete for a brand reach out recently about like what are some of the pregnancy clauses that I've had in my contracts that they can add to theirs, because their brand didn't like the one that kind of she offered up to be included in her next contract. And I think this is one that the PTRA has worked to put together. So
As a sample to say, hey,
mhm,
this is a sort of established, reasonable, based on multiple different brands, multiple different
yeah,
people weighing in. This is a reasonable thing to ask for.
totally. And it's
Yeah.
interesting even still that there are brands that are just like, I don't like that though. Like, but you almost have to
Yeah.
then like talk to people and be like, hey, what exists in yours that I
Hmm.
can use in mine, because it's tough if you can't like talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. And I think like you also bring up an important part of like say you had a miscarriage or something went wrong and you carried a baby for 10 weeks and something happens, you then go through this obviously huge emotional
Hmm.
toll of losing a baby, but then also physically like you're kind of pseudo
Hmm.
postpartum. And I have friends who have been through that and they're like, everybody talks about postpartum running, but no one talks about post
Hmm.
miscarriage or post loss of a fetus
Hmm.
running. So I think, yeah, there's just so much more. There's so much more to it than it seems.
Totally, 100%. And I'm grateful that we're seeing pregnancy clauses enter the picture. Brett Fordig made a joke recently that like for Western states commentary this year, he wants to make me like a here for the pregnancy deferral t-shirt that I can wear while I'm doing the preview episodes. I'm like, I don't know how that would go over, but I very much am here for the pregnancy deferral, and I'm here for it being
Yeah.
like expanded to not just include pregnancy, but like I
Yes.
guess include everything within the
Yes.
pregnancy journey, because I think it is a lot more nuanced that a lot of people don't actually realize.
Right. Yeah, like yeah, there's a lot more to it. And then the other thing too is like what about, you know, athletes who are not the one carrying the
Hmm.
child but that have a baby born within a month or
Yep.
two of a big race. I'm thinking about our friend Caleb
Hmm.
Olson who's he has a 3-week old now and is 4 weeks out from Western States trying to train and
Yeah.
adapt to life as a father. And him and Morgan are doing awesome. But at the same time, it's like, I know UTMB has a policy for non birthing parents
Yeah.
to defer their entry. And actually, Tyler is taking advantage of
Oh,
that
that's
for
awesome.
UTMB because we're due within a week of UTMB
Mhm.
this year. But I don't know of any policy like that for Western
No, and
states.
I think Caleb did inquire about that too, and that's not, which is, I'm surprised. Like, I'm impressed that UTMB does have that, and I would
Hmm.
love to see that apply to other races, like Hardrock and Western states, because I think, yeah, that's a reality that a lot of dads are experiencing too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh, but enough about me, Rachel. You just did what was like I was terrified to do and intimidated by.
Really?
Oh, I'm just
Oh,
so
I feel like you're in
intimidated.
such better shape than me.
No, okay. So for our listeners, Rachel just accomplished, and you are like probably like 24 hours removed from doing a rim to rim across the Grand Canyon. Your first experience doing that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've like
oh,
been to the canyon, but I haven't done the full crossing before.
and yeah, I got to live vicariously through you and your great brand support from Precision and Osprey, who are out there accompanying you on the journey, and great crewing from Tyler throughout. But you had, I mean, you have such limited time in your schedule to begin with, Rachel, that you had kind of targeted this weekend like months ago. You had rearranged your work schedule as such, and like getting to Arizona and getting to the Grand Canyon isn't like the easiest thing in the world from Salt Lake City. And to do so on like a holiday weekend and plan this grand adventure at 6 months pregnant is mind blowing. So, do you want to share a little bit about your last like 3 days?
Yeah, honestly, like I I just feel so grateful, especially for our partners. Like I think a lot of times, you get pregnant and you're a little sheepish to tell your sponsors, like, sorry, I'm not going to be racing for over a year,
Mhm.
and I probably won't be racing well for longer than that. And to have such enthusiastic support. Osprey has already been through one pregnancy with us, and they've always been supportive. And then I told Precision that I was pregnant. They're a new sponsor this year, so I just I felt a little bit bad about that, and they were just like, that's so awesome. Like, how can we support you? Like, do you have any other projects you're doing or any like, and I told them about this one because you and I had kind of talked about doing something together,
Yeah.
and not as a brand project, but as just a personal fun project. And they, like, the founder of the company and his brother flew over here from the United Kingdom and accompanied Vince from Osprey and I on this crossing of the Grand Canyon, and they took a bunch of photos and we did some interviews and some video.
Oh,
And it's just so cool to feel celebrated and supported in this journey where I'm obviously, I'm not winning races anytime soon, and they're just like super gung ho about it. So I'm really grateful for such great partners.
yeah, it was amazing to see. I loved seeing the snippets of photos of you with your cute little belly bump out there. And then I think one of my favorite photos is Vince decked out in his precision bucket hat, just like leading the train up the South Kaibab Trail.
He crushed it. So Vince from Osprey, he works in marketing at Osprey. He's running the Uray 50 miler, and he did the double crossing with Dave and Andy from Precision. And Vince just like, he's fit, man. I'm
Man,
excited for his Uray.
oh, so cool. Can you talk a little bit about the planning that went into it and truly like the adaptability that you had to approach the effort with? Because I think for anybody that's been pregnant before or has been somewhere along the journey, like you never know what body is going to show up on that day
Mm-hmm.
of your adventure. And I know, like yesterday, for example, I went out, or 2 days ago, I went out for a run, and I was like, "Yeah, Mike, I don't think like anything is going to be like physically limiting me for a little bit." And then the next day, I wake up with like extreme SI pain, and I'm like,
Oh
"Oh shoot!"
no.
So you never really
Dang it.
know what you're going to be given on that day. So, can you talk a little bit about how that flexible approach had to be, and really the planning that you
Mm-hmm.
had to like partake in for this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest thing about the Grand Canyon is there's no bailout spots. You can't just call someone halfway and say, "Hey, can you just drive in and pick me up? Like, I'm tired. I'm not going to make it." Like, you go down into the canyon and then you got to get yourself out. It's known for being pretty warm. And then obviously in pregnancy, like your intake of fluids is a lot higher than otherwise. So those were all things I was thinking about. Having run Chuckanut at I think 13 weeks pregnant with Lewis, I learned there that I actually eat a ton more as well. Like, I had packed for that 50K with more nutrition than I thought I would ever need, and I ran out just a little over
Wow.
halfway through the
Oh
race.
my God.
So I planned for that as well. And then I think also having people with me that, kind of knew, like, I might want to walk, I might want to stop and, take more breaks. And I think, like, in any adventure, kind of having the conversation ahead of time of expectations, like establishing open communication, not just for you as the what I saw myself as the weak link, but for everyone to feel comfortable speaking up and saying, "Hey, I got a rock in my shoe, I got to stop and get this out," or "I need to go to the bathroom," or "I need to get something out of my pack." Like, creating a safe space, especially with people you don't adventure with a
Mhm.
lot, to feel comfortable, voicing your needs, and then also having everyone be supportive of whatever that is. So it was really, really sweet. Like, I've known Vince for over 5 years now, but it was the first time meeting Dave and Andy, and they were just so kind and offering to carry things, and like all of them just kind of constantly checking in on each other, on me, like, how you feeling? How you feeling? Like, yeah, So I think that's a really big part of it.
All right, guys, just want to interrupt this fun episode with Rachel and Leah quickly to thank our sponsors, specifically John G, for all of their support for the podcast, for the trail community in general. We are such huge fans and very, very grateful to have them on board with us. I have been loving and living in the women's 5-inch pace short by John G. It is honestly the best thing ever, and it's keeping me chafe free as I'm training for Hardrock, including on those hot runs. Has this amazing silicone band on the inside of the bottom of the shorts, which keeps everything from moving around. It's honestly a lifesaver. I don't know how I lived without them. I don't know how I would ever live without them. So John G never stopped making them. Big fan. You can get your own pair using the code Trail Network for 10% off at johng.com. Back to our episode.
Yeah, it's great to have a support system out there. And we've talked a lot about like whether it's a mountain adventure, like going up and summiting a peak or a range of peaks, or doing what you did, where I think the most daunting thing about the Grand Canyon is like you do especially when you go rim to rim, you do this massive descent first, and then you're like, okay, I got this. You run flat for a while, but then you have a massive climb back out. So it's like the worst is not over until it's over. So it's daunting.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you felt overwhelmed by the task at hand?
Yeah. So we went north to south, which was also strategic in a couple different ways. Coming from Salt Lake City, it's a shorter drive there, but also it's more of a gradual descent, and that just feels better on my body, on my pelvic floor in pregnancy, as opposed to the really steep descent that you get from the South Rim.
Mm.
So yeah, we descended really, really well. And then we're kind of getting close to Phantom Ranch, and there's this spot where the canyon kind of narrows, and our family friend was telling us this area is called the box because the heat kind of like reflects off both sides of the canyon and creates a warmer just hotter temperatures in there. And I started feeling kind of hot, and then around this time I started getting this like really bad chafing / burning like in between my butt cheeks.
Oh, no.
TMI. But I think a lot of people have actually experienced this. I was telling Tyler about it, and he had this at Leadville, his first 100-miler. And that was really like, oh no, I was super worried that like, yeah, it was like really, really painful. So I was starting to feel a little nauseous, and then also had that going on. So ended up like
that can be day ending. Like I think
it can.
Not to make this about Mike's DNFs at races, but like he's DNF'd, I think, a race or two at like mile 88 to 90 for that exact reason. And it's
for the between the butt cheeks or just other chafing?
Between the butt cheeks.
Yeah.
And it's really debilitating.
Yeah. It really is. It's super painful.
Is there a way you would have troubleshot that? Like looking back, either prior or post?
Yeah, for sure. So, and Tyler has actually told me about this because when he ran the Leadville 100-miler, he had a very experienced pacer with him, and he's like, yes, the ring of fire.
Oh no.
He's like, this happens in drier climates. Like it rarely happens at Western states because you're constantly wet, and it's like, it's the salt from your sweat that's causing chafing, and you need to rinse yourself more frequently. So get, just squirt some water down there. And then also I didn't apply any anti-chafe cream. Usually I'll do some squirrel's nut butter before any big effort. I wasn't really thinking of this. Like, yes, it was a big effort,
but not as like race day.
Not as race day. It was going to be more slow. Like, I think, I would have put some anti-chafe on, and then also acknowledging that my body shape is very different right now. And so I have rubbing in places that I don't usually have rubbing. And then also bringing something like that with us. We had a first aid kit that Vince carried, but I didn't put any anti-chafe or anything in there. I ended up using some sunscreen, which actually helped quite a bit. Good. And then after like swimming in the river, I felt a lot better as well. But never would I ever have thought that would have been my limiting factor.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So then you get across. Did you stop at Phantom Ranch for lemonade?
We didn't get lemonade. It was pretty busy down there. We refilled our bottles there. We swam in the
That's
river,
nice.
and then Tyler drove the car around and he ran down, met us a little bit. We had just started our climb out a little ways, so he passed us, swam in the river, and then ran back up and caught us.
Oh, that's nice.
And then one of our family friends was had hiked into Skeleton Point, which is like 3 miles from the top, and brought orange soda and pizza, and
So
so that was
nice.
really cool too. Yeah.
How did you guys go up the Bright Angel Trail, or was that the South Kaibab Trail?
We went up South Kaibab.
Nice.
There's some construction and stuff going on, so it would have been possible to access Bright Angel, but you would have had to take the Tonto Trail over, so it would have been longer. We just took the most direct route.
How was the climbing? How did that feel at the end of like the day that you had? I think you guys started around 4 a.m. To avoid as much heat as possible. And I know when I've done rim trim or rim trimmed rim in the past, it's always that last climb out that just absolutely destroys me, because usually you're getting blasted by some heat. So how did that feel? And did you feel like you were able to approach that like in chunks and give yourself like the time if you needed it?
Yeah, I think there were a few things that really kind of played to our advantage. There was some cloud cover, which made it a lot cooler than I think it would have been otherwise. And then we had been taking the whole day really easy. So it wasn't like we went into that climb feeling, too spent.
Yeah.
And then our family friend who was at Skeleton Point, he's a hiker. He's not a trail runner. So we basically just hiked out with him, which I think was helpful too, just to like slow our pace a little bit.
Totally. Oh, that's nice to have, and like to almost like break up your day too, from like getting to Phantom Ranch and then seeing Tyler at the river and then having Skeleton Point, little milestones along the way.
Yeah, it was good. And then I was considering going back the other way on Sunday, and I was kind of like, I had a great day on Saturday. I feel really good. My pelvic floor feels really good. I just was like, I don't feel the need to push it and like potentially get into a situation where it doesn't feel really good.
Totally.
So I just decided to hop in the shuttle with Tyler and then do a shorter run from the North Rim while we waited for our friends to finish. And I'm so glad I did, because it was a lot hotter on Sunday. There was a lot less cloud cover. And then we all kind of thought that the North Rim would have been more shaded because there's a lot more trees over there, but it was actually pretty exposed. So I'm feeling really good about that decision to just take the win and not push it.
I think that's a great decision, and it's nice to come into big adventures like that with options. I think something that can feel overwhelming sometimes is feeling like there's only one way in and one way out, and knowing that you had options there and like you had a good mindset that was approaching it with like a lot of thought to know what felt good and what felt right for you. And I think that's really valuable, especially when you're pregnant and you have, just like various controllables and uncontrollables contributing to really like take it all in and assess. And it was probably really nice for you and Tyler to kind of share a run the next day. And like, I saw you guys like your cup of coffee at the rim in the morning, and I was like, that looks like my dream.
Yeah, that was exactly, that photo was just, we made some coffee in our camper on the rim and just had a slow morning. So yeah, it was great.
And then you just hucked it right back to Salt Lake City to get back, last night?
Yeah, we got back last night. My parents stayed at our house and watched Lewis and Teddy and just had such a blast. So yeah, super, super grateful to them for holding down the fort here. They're like, Teddy only escaped 2 times. They're like, Lewis knows how to open the front door now. So those two are in cahoots. Lewis is like, all right, I'll open the door. You go for a little joyride around the neighborhood. It'll all be good.
We won't tell anyone.
So funny.
Can you talk a little bit about your training for the last couple months? I feel like it's been probably a bit sporadic and not like exactly how many would approach a rim to rim. But I do think that speaks to a lot of like the lifetime miles and experience and like the pace you guys ended up approaching the day with. Yeah, how do you feel like you were prepared for that day?
I felt very ill prepared. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see my face kind of cringing. Let's see. I was just kind of looking at my Strava. For a while, I was kind of like I had a decent, steady 20 to 30 miles a week. And then about 6 weeks ago, I was just kind of like slowly petering out. And it's all very dependent on the rotation that I'm on. But basically, the 3 weeks before rim to rim, it was for running 0, 5, 0 miles of running
At night.
And then the week of rim to rim, I had a little more time. So I went on like 2 5-mile runs, but it was just a lot of hiking. And I tried to do some more steep climbing, just knowing that was going to be a part of, climbing out the South Rim. But yeah, you're right. I have a lot of lifetime miles and a lot of experience. And I still felt like the effort would be very doable even with kind of minimal training in recent
Well,
weeks.
I think you're a great example of having 2 pregnancies that your lifestyle dynamic has been quite different for both. And the running that you've been able to do has been quite different for both. Do you feel like that is accurate? Because that's how I've perceived it from the outside.
Yeah, like with Lewis, I was running, I think if I look back, I was still running, I think I was running like 40 to 50 miles a week, maybe kind of up until this point. And then in the 3rd trimester, maybe more like 20, and it was probably a lot more hiking, but I also had more time, more freedom, just generally felt a lot better in that pregnancy. I've felt so much more fatigued this time around. So it's vastly different. And I feel like, everybody says every pregnancy is different. Every person is different. And it's so very true in this circumstance.
Oh, so impressive though. Like, I think I'm impressed by your mindset. I'm impressed by your adaptability and most of all, just your ability to do what you just accomplished and have a great support system doing so. I think it's hard to come by and have all those boxes checked. And I think, what a great spot to be and to come out of it healthy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel really good. I feel like even the chafing has subsided. So yeah, no, it's all about like, this is something I've been working on, is kind of trying to reclaim some joy with it, because it's been a really hard journey. And I just told Tyler, I was like, I feel like I'm getting some of my joy back finally. Just, I think a lot of people listening probably derive a lot of meaning and joy out of being able to move their bodies and feeling healthy. And yeah, it's been not that way for the past few months. So this felt like a celebration and hopefully turning the page of a new chapter of feeling good and feeling some more joy around this.
Oh, I love that so much. I think it's really easy to kind of feel trapped sometimes during pregnancy, like trapped in your body, trapped in like whatever life is throwing at you in those moments, and overcoming the inertia to get out of it and to like kind of get your body moving again. I started a run 2 days ago where I was like, those initial first steps, I kept telling Mike, I was like, I feel fine, but I'm just like, those first steps were the hardest ones, just to like get yourself actually running. And then once you're running, it's okay. But I feel like,
I can do this.
That describes pregnancy running in its entirety.
Totally. Yeah. I'm curious how your training and running has been going, and whether like how it's different or similar than you expected.
I think what I've always struggled with, even like pre-pregnancy, has been motivation. And I do quite well in my training when I have a lofty, overwhelming goal on the calendar that like I need to be prepared for. And if I'm not training for that race, then I'm doing myself a disservice for my performance in that race. So right now,
but with no races on the calendar,
my motivation is kind of tanked at times. And then also, like I felt like my training was actually great. I felt great through like 13, 14 weeks. And then I started just like being a little bit more casual about it, putting like less pressure on myself. So I've been a lot more in that like 30-mile range per week. But then I looked at my Strava. I did a lot of like hiking this week, which was nice. So I had my like biggest vert week in a minute. I think I did like
9,000
I
feet.
know. I don't know how it happened. And it was
in
like,
25 miles.
I don't know how it happened, but
that's basically Zagama, Leah.
Yeah, dude, I want to do Zagama so bad. It looks so cool.
Should we do it next year?
I think I would do that.
Let's
That
do
would be
it.
so cool. Oh, that'd be so cool. But yeah, I think I've been a lot more. I've just been really busy with work too, which is just an ebb and flow with me. And I think I need to start getting out in the morning if I actually want to get a run in for the day, because I've been noticing I'll just keep working hours on hours through the evening and then be like, if I run today, I'll just go for a walk around the neighborhood. That's nice. But I have been enjoying the slower pace of life in some ways. Like, we've been accomplishing so much around our house, and like just getting stuff together and prepared and organized. And I feel like when one thing gives, you kind of realize how much time you have whenever you're not spending so much of it running. So it's nice.
Yeah, that's a good lesson in pregnancy and in anything new in life, is just kind of celebrating the stage that you're in and knowing that you're not going to be pregnant forever, but just like embracing it, because it is a really unique time where your focus is just different and you're not going to be running high mileage weeks.
Exactly.
But I'm looking at your Strava and it's pretty smooth, actually.
I don't know. I feel
your
like
curves are pretty
I think
smooth.
Caleb Olson told me the exact opposite a couple weeks ago, and it was like up and
Really?
down and up and down. Because he sent me his, and his build for Western States is like beautiful. He doesn't share everything, but I was like, and I joked around. I said, "Oh, that looks exactly like my Strava right now." And then he sent it back, and it was like up and down and up and down.
It's more smooth than mine. That's what I'm comparing it to. Not that we should compare, but you're doing awesome.
Yeah. And we should get out for a run soon. I feel like, yeah,
that would, for sure.
That would be
this
nice.
week. Yeah. Was there anything else that we didn't touch on?
I think
so.
Yeah, this is like such a fun time of year too. I think we've got a lot of fun races coming up in the next month to follow along with. So I feel like we're just all going to be over here being complete super fans in every episode for the next month or 3.
Absolutely. I'm going to be doing a 48K Broken Arrow preview with MK. That's over awesome. On the Sub Hub podcast. So yeah, I don't know when that'll be coming out, but I'm excited to, there's so many really good competitive races happening. So
many. Oh man.
Super exciting time of year.
That's so cool. Yeah, we've got lots of fun things. I think Twisted Fork in a couple weeks here in Park City, and then right into Broken Arrow, and then right into Western States, and it's fun racing.
Yeah.
Next year, Rach.
Yeah, I know. We'll have to start teasing our dreams for 2026.
Yeah, that'll be next time.
Awesome. Well, so good catching up with you, Leah. This is super fun. I'm excited for what's to come. We're going to have some babies in 3 months.
I know. Happy 3rd trimester.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.